Genealogy has become big business in the last number of years. People have longed to see where they come from and who they belong to. In the Bible, genealogy plays a big part of the story of Scripture. It's a way to help us understand that God is a God of history, not just someone who started the world spinning a long time ago and then steps away. But God is involved in the very details of history. And when we know names and places and people, we know that God's story is our story. And so today we continue series 66, where we go to the book of Ruth. Ruth is the first book in Scripture where we begin to learn about the overall family and story of who would become Jesus' family. And so in the story of Ruth, we learn about, first of all, the main character of Naomi. Naomi has a husband and two sons. Her husband dies, and her two sons marry Moabite women. They're in the country of Moab after a famine, and they marry these women, and then her two sons also die. Naomi has a very hard and difficult life, and one of her daughter-in-laws is released. Naomi knows that her daughter-in-laws have a long and fruitful life ahead of them, and so she doesn't want to hold them down, and she releases them from any obligation to take care of her or their family. And so she allows them to leave. One of her daughter-in-laws accepts this challenge and goes away, even though she's sad and upset because she loves her mother-in-law, but she knows that it's the right choice. The other daughter-in-law, who we know as Ruth, the namesake of this particular book, decides that she wants to stay with Naomi and continue to have a life with her. One of the most famous verses in all of this book comes from the first chapter, verse 16, 17, and 18. So it's a group of verses. But Ruth replied, it says, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn my back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. "Where you go, I will go. Your God will be my God." This is a powerful statement on the importance of family and the importance of our commitments to one another. We certainly can learn this lesson in these days and in our time, because it seems as if families are ripped apart and commitments only last for a season or a moment. But our importance of commitment is a very biblical and important concept, that we commit to one another in covenant relationship. When we have these covenant relationships, we have an opportunity to live out the fullness and the best that God has for us. As the book of Ruth continues, Naomi and Ruth travel back to her homeland and gain insight, new opportunities to establish themselves. They had gone to Moab because of a famine. The famine was over, and they returned back to Israel. And in that time, Ruth meets a man by the name of Boaz. Boaz is an important figure in Scripture, and he actually is the great-grandfather of King David. As we continue through the Bible, we'll learn more about this family and the importance of things. But they meet this man, and he is generous. He allows them to glean in their field and protects them and overshadows them. And Boaz is continually kind and supportive to both Naomi and Ruth. Now, as we think about this character and think about this book, do you happen to know what kind of man Boaz was before he got married? He was ruthless. That's true. Boaz got married to Ruth and became the father of Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of David. There is a small genealogy of what would become eventually Jesus' family. And so this story reminds us of God's faithfulness, that even when things are falling apart, even when things are rough and difficult, God's faithfulness remains. And even though Naomi and Ruth and the rest of her family didn't know exactly how things were going to pan out, they turned out right. They turned out well. I don't know what season of life you are in currently, but I imagine that you've hit some bumps in the road. I imagine as you look back on the timeline of your life, it's not a straight shot, that there are twists and turns and valleys and mountaintops. What I hope we'll realize as we think about this story of Ruth is that we will understand that God has his hand and his finger on all of it, so that we can understand that we are God's and God belongs to us, and that God longs to bless us and keep us. I invite you to read this story. It's a very short one, only 4 chapters long, but it has some important details about the faithfulness of God. I hope this blesses you today, and I encourage you to continue to reach out and think about how God is in your life. God bless. Have a great day.